I actually was raised in church. My mom was in a senior group. We went to churches everywhere, from the back of a cornfield to big sanctuaries. So I was raised in it. Like a lot of teenagers, I fell away from the Lord when I was like 17, 18, and tried different things, but I always knew the truth was in me. In 1994, I was in a severe car wreck. I was going down Hall Branch Road, passed a guy. It was mist and rain, and somebody pulled out in front of me, so I hit the brakes. Long story short, totaled my car. But the person I just passed before the wreck happened, didn't know this at the time, but it was my mother's pastor. 2 days later, he come to my house and knocked on my front door, and I invited him in. He introduced himself, and he started telling me about what happened that day. And he said when he got to the truck, he said that I was dead, incoherent, that I was gone. And this man had been preaching for like 25 years, and he said he heard God's voice plainer than he ever heard before. And God said to pray for him, he's going to live. So immediately he started praying, and he said, I sit up in the truck seat. He said it scared him to death. So he quit praying, and he said I fell back over. Seconds later, they all gathered around my truck, started praying again, and I rose up and kicked the door open of my truck and went to the hospital. Shortly after that, good friends of mine invited me to church, and I went 2 or 3 times. About a 4th time I went, I was running to the altar and give my life back to the Lord in 94, at a double-wide trailer at a coffee table, crying, tears flowing. 1994.
I was born in the altar. My parents were pastors when my mom was pregnant with me, and I was raised in the altar. I was raised in church my entire life. There was a time that I was not living my calling, let's say, but life got hard, and I was hurt, and I came back to the Lord and committed fully to Him till today. We got married in 2010, and we came to this church. We were broken. I mean, shattered. That bad. It's like sometimes we face different obstacles in marriage or crisis in the family, in the church, with the church family, finances. But when it's all together, I mean, really you feel like your life is just shattered, and that's how we got here. And the Lord wrapped us really with acceptance. Especially, there's a time when you don't know where you belong. And when we got to this church, it was like, we realized through the love of the pastor, through the love of the people, the acceptance that we just belong to the kingdom. And on 2012, 2 years after, the Lord is already working in our family, but we hit a financial crisis. And I will let him explain a little bit more about that.
Yeah, 2012, it was a major crisis. God's always blessed me in my finances, always. Anything I put my hands to prospered. That's when I got saved in 94. He led me to the book of Deuteronomy, and he taught me through the book of Deuteronomy anything that I would do with all my heart, putting Him first, that I would prosper. And he done that over and over. But in 2012, we hit a situation where the market collapsed. We were building houses. We had probably $2.5 million on the books. We had several houses, subdivisions, and we couldn't give anything away. And within a 6-month period, she was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. My stomach was ripped open 5 different places, and our finances were gone. This happened in about 6 months, to the point we couldn't even pay our water bill. And a lot of times, through that, the only way we had money to buy food was coming to Agape. Now I talked to the pastor and asked him, is there anything I could do? And he would let me paint the baseboards of the church, or clean the church, or rake their yard, or whatever, just to get money to help put food on the table. But he was always encouraging and encouraging. And I remember one night as I was praying, I had several prayer journals, and I said to the Lord, I said, you can send one person, or you can speak one word, God, and all this would go away. Well, He sent one person. and that man still comes to the church today. He wrote us a check for over $135,000 to help pay this debt off so we could actually just get rid of it and get it off our back. And from that same day, actually before that, after I wrote that journal, something broke off of me. And I remember we both were going through the house that day, and I was just shouting to the top of my lungs, hallelujah, hallelujah. And something actually broke off of us at that point.
Yes.
And then the creditors were called, and the sheriff would come to our yard once a week.
Twice.
With judgments and liens, and I would just kind of laugh. I'm like, you know what, God, you got this. I can't do anything to change my situation, but you can. Then it's when the guy came to us and said that God spoke to him to help me in my finances. And from that day, partnering with him, you just God opened a way. Yeah, and from that, he's elevated us to where we are now. Still not where, some people might think financial security is at, but our faith is in God, that's for sure.
Yes. He really proved his faithfulness through it all.
Amen. We started coming to Agape 6 years ago, I believe. 6 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
We'd just been recently married. Come from two different backgrounds, two different relationships, and it was almost like we had everything in one big blender and it was on high. Trying to find a good church for our kids, for our family to grow in, and good friends of ours actually invited us to come. And by that time, they were having church at a storefront in Richlands, and from the minute I got there, I knew I was home. And during our situation, we'd be going through something throughout the week or whatever, and Pastor Jim would just call us out of the blue and, hey son, how you doing? We love you, we believe in you. And it was more than a coincidence. It was a precise time that he would call us out of the blue. He didn't know what we were going through. And it was just like, that's what we needed to hear that day. Just somebody that would accept us. After we started going to the storefront and started participating, we wasn't exactly on the same page, but I told my wife, I said, look, I really feel led of the Lord to go to this church. I think it's going to be a good place for us to grow, for our children to grow. And she finally come along, and once she got involved in it, she started seeing it the way I saw it. And from that point, we were invited to be on the praise team where we could use our talents and our gifts. And it was always an open door. Pastor Jim always said, be obedient to the Spirit. Whatever the Spirit leads you to do, I trust you. I trusted God in you. And he would put us out there, and it actually helped us grow.
Absolutely. It is like when somebody has calloused, and it's not easy to join in or interact because there's so much hurt and pain and insecurities, but there's nothing that can prevail when the love is genuine, and the love
Amen.
from the pastors.
That's right.
Really pretty much just allow those things just to fall off, and we feel really, really loved by people that really care, and people like pastors with that authority over our lives and that calling over our lives, really genuinely believing that the gift that is inside of us is true and anointed. Pastor Joyce is something that I've never seen before. I have never met somebody with so much kindness, so much strength. In that kindness, there's so much strength, and that can care that much, and a warrior inside that love is like a contrast, but it is something so genuine, so pure that she showed and she lived, that really is a role model. Definitely is something that like I said, never seen in my life before, but something that it looks like a goal. It looks like something that you want to be that kind of woman one day, and it's just, I don't have any more words. I don't know what else to say.
I would say, just come. If you get in the door, you'll feel the love of God in this church, because it's here, like she just said, it's genuine. the anointing is something you can't fake, and along with the love of God, you can't fake it. It's either here or it's not here. And to have a pastor covering over you, like Pastor Jim and Miss Pastor Joyce, it's genuine. I mean, if you could just make it in the house, just come expecting, come with an open heart and an open mind, God will fill you, and you'll experience what we're talking about. It's an experience.
I really thank God for this place. This place is like an oasis in the middle of a desert for many people, and that's what it was for me. It's really a place where you can feel, like you are in a family, and I am so grateful that today God have given our pastor the strength, the wisdom to keep on going, and I'm looking forward to what the Lord has in store for this church.
Amen.
Jeff, sorry. That was a joke.
Give me your watch.
Oh, Lordy.
A watch? What?
So you
Do you
don't know
want
what
some
time is it?
Because he likes it.
No, I want it.
He won't give it back. Don't take it off.
But like my light, Kelly, you have. I told him, I said, look, now if you borrow my shop light, bring it back now.
Yeah, we broke it.
They broke it. A hard time in our marriage. We've been married since about 7 years now, since 2009. 8.
No, okay, let me start.
Let you
Okay.
start. Thank you.
When's our anniversary?
2010,
Take
we
5.
got married.
Good. 2010.